It takes a special kind of person to pull off a con, with just the right amount of charm, a dash of smarts, and a lot of luck. Throughout history, these diabolical deceivers have pulled off some amazing schemes, swindling people out of millions of dollars and, in some cases, even more. So, today, we're going to trick you into learning about the biggest scams in history. But before we take you for all you're worth, why don't you take a stroll over to that subscribe button? Then let us know in the comments what other historical hustlers you want to hear about. For now, we've got a bridge to sell you. Everyone's heard of a Ponzi scheme in the news, or when you misheard someone talking about Arthur Fonzarelli's schemes. But where did the Ponzi part of that scheme's name come from? The strategy was invented by Italian immigrant Charles Ponzi in the early 20th century. He landed in the land of opportunity with no money and a pocket full of dreams. Oh, sorry, that's a pocket full of schemes. After setting up a business called the Securities Exchange Company, Ponzi started offering investments that would pay back 100% interest after 90 days. In a classic robbing Peter to pay Paul scenario, Ponzi was using the money from one investor to pay off another investor. Rinse, then repeat. This illusion of a never-ending flow of cash was kept up for 2 years, with Ponzi raking in $250,000 a day before he was eventually caught. His investors ended up losing about $20 million in the scheme. Ayy! When you're particularly proficient at committing crimes, the authorities define you as a career criminal. Such was the case for Frank Abigel Jr., whose name you might know from the Steven Spielberg movie Catch Me If You Can. He was a con man who successfully posed as a doctor, airline pilot, college professor, and even a lawyer. Not all at the same time, mind you. Throughout the 1960s, Abigel passed about $2.5 million worth of fake checks all over the world. He was eventually caught, served his time, and was released. In an irony of all ironies, he opened Abigel and Associates, which helps companies detect fraud. If you can't beat them, join them. But the con man will ever con, man, because author Alan C. Logan released a 2020 book called The Greatest Hoax on Earth, suggesting that Frank being on the run from ages 16 to 20 was complete fiction. Public records obtained by Logan show that Abigel was actually confined in prison during those years. Oh, man, is his name even Frank? Let's chat a bit about Bernie Madoff, who took the Ponzi scheme and dialed it up to $65 billion. Madoff conned over 1,300 investors over several years, destroying most of his victims financially. Several of his victims were prominent Hollywood figures like Kevin Bacon, Larry King, and even Steven Spielberg, who you'd think would know better after Catch Me If You Can. With the promise of suspiciously high returns on their money, who wouldn't immediately invest with Madoff? And since he was able to use investor number one's money to pay off investor number two, nobody ever questioned his claims, which allowed him to pocket the extra money. Bernie Madoff was famously arrested and convicted in 2008 and sentenced to 150 years in prison, serving until his death in 2021. Do his bones serve out the remaining years, or, During the Russian Revolution in July of 1918, Tsar Nicholas II and his family were imprisoned in a basement when the call came to have them executed. Russian revolutionaries carried out the regicide in a hail of bullets which vanquished the whole family in one fell swoop. That's if you believe the official story. Real Anastasia fans, or Fanastasias, believe that the young Grand Duchess survived the firing squad and lived on, and no one wanted people to believe that more than Anna Anderson. 2 years after the murder of the Tsar's family, Anna started claiming she was their youngest daughter, Anastasia. According to Anderson, 2 brothers carried her to safety the night of the shooting and transported her to Romania. None of the Romanov relatives believed this story, but the court of public opinion saw some prominent supporters on her side. Her harrowing tale was the basis for the 1956 Ingrid Bergman film Anastasia, and continued to be a well-known point of contention until Anderson's death in 1984. A post-mortem DNA test finally confirmed that her story was completely false, and she was in no way related to the royal family. At least we got a good musical out of it. We'd love to tell you definitively that Ferdinand Waldo de Mara was born in 1921. But with a guy known as the Great Imposter, no one can actually be sure that's true. We do know he had a high IQ, a photographic memory, and a penchant for stealing identities. Over the years, he was able to pull off convincing impressions of a zoologist, a civil engineer, a prison warden, and even a Benedictine monk. And that's just a small sample. His downfall finally came during the Korean War, while he was posing as a doctor on a Royal Canadian Navy destroyer. You know, for fun. Several wounded men were brought in to have their injuries tended, and, to his credit, DeMauro was able to bluff his way through multiple life-saving surgeries using a textbook as a guide. News started to spread of his heroism, and the more people learned about this war hero, the more they realized he was full of baloney. He became too famous to continue his shenanigans after that, especially once Tony Curtis played him in a movie called The Great Imposter. There's no shortage of stories about scheming, conniving Hollywood managers. And Lou Pearlman interpreted that as part of the job description. While you may not recognize his name, you definitely recognize his clients, whether you wanted to or not. He was the man behind the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, either of which could generate enough revenue on their own to pay for 1,000 lifetimes of luxury living. But the entire time Pearlman was managing successful boy bands, he was also getting friends and family to invest in bogus business ventures with names like Transcontinental Airlines, Inc. Many of the people investing were elderly who lost their life savings because of his dirty dealings. He was arrested in 2007 and sentenced to 25 years in the slammer. He passed away while incarcerated in 2016. Bye, bye, bye. A scoundrel like Viktor Lustig pulled many a con in his lifetime. But the bamboos he is best known for is selling the whole-ass Eiffel Tower for scrap, twice. It all started in 1925 with an article debating whether the deteriorating Eiffel Tower should be repaired or sold. Victor liked the sell option and liked it even more when he realized he could pretend to be the seller. He used a fake government ID to meet with several dealers, explaining the tower was too expensive to repair and needed to be hauled away by scrappers. One dealer, André Poisson, handed Lustig a big fat check for all that wrought iron. Lustig, of course, cashed the check and disappeared. By the time Poisson realized what happened, he was too embarrassed to make a report to the police. Lustig, emboldened by the fact that he got away with it lickety-split, went back to Paris and tried the same scam a second time. This time, the investors smelled something rotten and reported Lustig. He fled to America, where he graduated to counterfeiting and was eventually arrested for his efforts. When you're the first black actor to win the Academy Award for Best Actor, you can almost guarantee there are going to be admirers and imitators. But in the 1980s, David Hampton figured out a way to make a few bucks from the sincerest form of flattery. Hampton was able to con wealthy New Yorkers out of thousands by gaining their trust and convincing them he was the son of actor and director Sidney Poitier. Seems like the desire to be around famous people overpowered the desire to do any background checking, because David Poitier successfully gallivanted around town, obtaining free meals and plenty of cash, although he was eventually arrested and served 21 months in prison. His story inspired the play 6 Degrees of Separation by John Gare, and by extension, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, although the movie version starred Will Smith. Hampton did try one more get-rich-quick scheme, suing Gare for $100 million. But just like all his other grifts, it failed. Listen, if you're going to try your hand at a con, it's probably a good idea to stick to just one story to keep things simple. Someone should have told that to Kristoff Rune, who began his scamming career in France. He posed as a nobleman and faked the deed to a property he didn't own, selling it for a cool $1.4 million. That should have been enough to hang up the con man's uniform for good, but Rune had to go and complicate things. He came to the US in 1991, posing as a movie producer and ex-boxing champion. And if that wasn't enough, he also claimed he was a relative of not only the Rockefeller family, but also Sophia Loren. Rune was finally fined $9 million for his crimes, in order to pay his victims $1.2 million in restitution. After he was released from prison, things didn't change much. He still hung out with celebrities in France and was eventually arrested again in 2014 for selling fake visas and passports. In what shakes out to be a truly disturbing case of stolen identity, Frédéric Bordon somehow convinced police in 1997 that he was a missing 16-year-old boy from Texas. Nicholas Barkley had gone missing from home 3 years prior, and all hope seemed to be lost, until Bordon showed up at their doorstep. Despite the fact that his hair and eyes were the wrong color, he had a French accent, and he was 23 years old, the family accepted him as their lost child. Maybe they actually believed it, or maybe it was their way of accepting their child was never coming home. After 3 months, a private investigator confirmed to the family that their returned son was not Nicholas after all, and that they were the latest victims of the French con artist known as the Chameleon, whose specialty was assuming the identities of missing individuals. Hey, we did a whole video about this guy. Back in the 1820s, a bunch of investors met with the prince of a country called Poes, located near modern-day Honduras. Poes was an up-and-coming getaway that was supposed to be the greatest thing until sliced bread was invented 100 years in the future. The only problem was that Poes never existed. The guidebook provided to investors with information on geography and resources was a phony, and the guy selling them, Gregor MacGregor, was not any kind of prince. MacGregor ended up taking the money and bolting, allowing these investors to sail to the false nation. While MacGregor was busy duping more targets in France, his ill-fated investors mostly died off heading to a great nothing in the ocean. Thanks for the money, though. Back in the 19th century, the world was gripped by the Spiritualism movement. This time period was just lousy with seances and ghost photography. And to navigate these vast spiritual realms were mediums. Helping to spark this rising religious movement were Kate, Margareta, and Leah Fox. From the time they were children in the 1840s, they convinced their parents they could speak to ghosts through a system of knocks. This childhood prank soon snowballed into a huge money-making scam. As they grew, the sisters started making money hand over fist by hosting bogus seances. Eventually, they admitted how they faked their ghostly group meetings. But spiritualism still remained popular. Maybe some people just like being hoodwinked. So what do you think? Would you have fallen for any of these schemes? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.